Okay, it is now my pleasure to welcome our main speaker, Joe Jay from Santa Barbara.
Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out?
Well, I'm Joe and I'm an alcoholic. And it's a miracle that I'm alive today. And it's a miracle that I'm sober today. And it's an even greater miracle that I'm sober and I'm happy. And happy, joyous, and free. Before Alcoholics Anonymous, by the end of my drinking career, my world was so small, so dark. And today it's so full, so big, and busy. I get to be, I like how, happy birthday, Tom and Jordan, and I like how you put that. I was dying, living an alcoholic death. I was a shell. I was not a complete man, that's for sure. I was a scared boy, and alcohol was my higher power. I was my higher power and alcohol. And where did that get me? By the end, I was drinking whiskey, alone, in bed, suicidally. And today, 11 and a half years later, I have no interest in the drink. No human power could relieve me of my alcoholism. God couldn't, what if you saw it? Like I said, it's a miracle I'm alive today, and it's a miracle I can be of use to others. So I came into Alcoholics Anonymous just to learn how to not drink myself to death, which is where I was headed in 2013, December. And AA has given me so much more than sobriety. It's given me so much more than actually being able to not start drinking again. It's given me a purpose in life. I have a purpose in life today. Never had a purpose before AA. And that purpose is to be of use to other people, to be able to work with the new man, to walk a man through the 12 steps and to see that light come on. What a gift. And I got some sponsees here tonight. I might need these Kleenex because, what an honor. It's a privilege to have these guys sitting here today, and it's amazing to have a sponsor too. And he says things, his name's Jim B. He's up at the convention up in Canada, the International AA Convention. And he says, like, God lives in the present. Things like that. Because I'm an alcoholic for the alcoholic, the problem centers in the mind. Like, alcohol was but a symptom. Like I said, I have no desire to drink anymore. But here I am stuck with this head, this alcoholic head. And I get stuck I'm the most selfish, in my nature, I'm the most selfish, self-centered, self-absorbed, egotistical, fearful man I've ever known. But that I've ever met. Alcoholics Anonymous gives me tools to take contrary actions against that nature. And I get to practice these principles in all my affairs. You know, these 12 steps are a working part of my daily life today. And I can turn it over. When I get in fear, self-reliance always fails me. But, step 3, I get to turn my will over to a God of my understanding that I get to seek. And I'm seeking that God. And I'm seeking a will that's better than my will. My will got me drinking whiskey alone in bed suicidally at the end. And here I am today. I'm seeking God. I fail all the time. I take my will back daily. I fuck up. But I can recognize it now because of step 7, 6 and 7, and all the steps. I recognize. I do 10 steps with my buddy Jake. I get on the phone and I'm like, okay, because I'm a resentment factory. I'm a resentment factory. I'm irritable. I'm thin-skinned, and I'm sensitive. I take things personally. So, I work with the public, and I work in farmers markets, and I love my job. And I get to be I get to be surrounded by people that are happy and appreciative. And occasionally I get someone that pisses me off, or just throughout my day, whatever it may be. I pick up resentments. I do. And when I first came into Alcoholics Anonymous, I had never done anything like a searching, fearless, and moral inventory of myself. Never. It was like, you don't understand. This was, if you had these problems, you'd drink too. And it was, I'm the page 60 to 64 alcoholic. If only I was the actor, I am the actor that wants to run the whole show. If only they would do as I wish, life would be wonderful. And I could manage it all, right? I can control and manipulate. And thank you, AA, for giving me these 12 steps. Thank you, Bill and Bob. Thank you, Ebby Thatcher. So Roland Hazard went to Europe, right? And he saw Dr. Jung. And that's in the early part. I don't know if that's chapter 2. And Carl Jung told Roland Hazard, who was an alcoholic of the hopeless variety, that he was doomed. He was doomed to an alcoholic death. And alcoholics are doomed. We're all doomed. Look at us all in here. We're sober. There's a bunch of people in here not drinking. How good does it feel to not be hungover on the 5th of July? Huh? Let's pat God on the back for that one. Here we are, group of drunks, hanging out on a Saturday night and eating cake and drinking coffee, and a bunch of us are going to meet up afterwards for like sober fun and have some burgers. And I got to ride down with my buddy. Andrew drove us down with some of my friends, and we're fellowshipping on the way down. And we've done that before, to come down and see Fred speak and Darren. And it's like I never thought that I would have so much fun sober. And welcome to the newcomers. We got a lot of newcomers here tonight. Welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. Like Tom said, don't leave before the miracle. And you're probably like, this guy's crazy. There's no way he's having fun in sobriety. Just don't leave before the miracle happens. Join us on this broad highway. You could do this thing, or you could do that other thing, if you're a real alcoholic. And I'm assuming if you're in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous on a Saturday night, you might have a problem. I got problems still, but alcohol is not one of them. And so when Roland went to Europe, Dr. Jung told him that you're doomed. There is an exception, and that is if you have a vital spiritual experience. And I think he put it like religious conversion or something. But this 12th step, it promises a spiritual awakening, and I've had the spiritual awakening, and I've had many spiritual experiences. I've been stacking spiritual experiences since I came back to Alcoholics Anonymous. My sober date is December 20th, 2013, and my home group is the Junkyard Dogs. Wolf, you guys. I love that meeting. I hear men talk about how they treat their alcoholism in there. We are into the solution. And so Roland said, is there any exception? If you have a vital spiritual experience, there have been cases where these hopeless drunks have recovered. And I'm so glad that he brought that back. Roland told that to Ebby. Ebby told that to Bill Wilson. Bill Wilson shared that. And look, this is mushroomed into something incredible that in 90 years, there's AA, there's millions of us. There's AA in 150 countries in this world. And I think a large reason for that is because when Ebby Thatcher came to hang out with Bill in Brooklyn, and Bill slid him a drink, and he's like, no, it's okay, and he passed, and Bill was shocked, 'cause this was his old drinking buddy, and he had something had gotten into him, and he had that clear-eyed look, and Bill was intrigued, and there was a seed planted, and he started to get into spirituality, and when I came to AA, I was spiritually dead, so I have spirituality today, and Bill was really apprehensive and resistant, not just apprehensive, resistant. He said, why don't you choose your own conception of God? And here, because of that, we have Alcoholics Anonymous exploding in the 1930s and 40s, and then to what it is today. Now I'm so grateful for I love Alcoholics Anonymous. I love my new life. Drinking suicidally in bed, I don't even relate to that guy anymore. And here I am today loving life. I hated myself, today I love myself. That's 100% because of this program. I've made a host of friends in AA, a host of true friendships, not dive bar, superficial friendships. You know, people I can count on. And so I grew up on the East Coast in Connecticut, in the suburbs of New York, and I've always been a nervous guy, and I think some of you can relate. I was nervous, a nervous kid, and I'd get nauseous if I was ever taken out of my familiarity zone. Like, this is something that's uncomfortable for me, to stand in front of a bunch of people and talk. But AA has taught me to do things that are uncomfortable, and I could not do that. And as a kid, it would really fuck me up, and I would have nausea. I remember going to summer camp when I was like 7 years old, and I still remember how scared I was that I had to learn how to swim. And it was just like that nauseous feeling. And so when the drink was introduced to me, drink and drugs were introduced to me, I first took that drink, and it was like, oh, where's this been all my life? It's like, this thing was invented for me. I thought it was invented for me, for this personality type. And I loved alcohol right from the start. And I hit the ground running. And I knew pretty early on that I didn't drink like normal people. So after high school, didn't really know what I was doing. I was like I said, in the New York area. I went to boarding school in Vermont. My senior year, I started to just like face consequences. There were consequences. My grades plummeted because I started drinking and drugging at the end of my junior year, and I lost I was class president. They took that away from me. I had barely graduated because I was caught for plagiarism. It was just like this dishonesty, these little things that I look back on now, and I'm seeing the consequences of this coming into my life. And I was always that nervous guy, but then once I had drugs and alcohol, it was like it was on. And I kind of stopped giving a fuck. And that's what weed could do, you know? It was just like, oh, and in boarding school, I couldn't really get away with drinking, so it was a lot of weed. And it helped me to not give a fuck, and I escaped. So once I was introduced to substances that could help me escape what's going on in here, this alcoholic head, I thought I had arrived. And so I barely graduated. I didn't know what I was doing, and my parents said, why don't you go live with grandma in Napomo? And if you don't know Napomo, it's a little town near Pismo Beach. And so I moved out sure, yeah, that sounds great. I love California, and I'd come out here and visit as a kid. And, we'd go to Santa Maria, we'd go to Jocko's in Napomo. And best steakhouse, if you're up there, still affordable, right? Jocko's, Ron? Hell yeah, that sounds good. Maybe we'll go to Jocko's after the meeting. We'll drive up. It's not that far. We got nothing to do tomorrow. So I was like, yeah, great. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And so I moved in with Grandma in Napomo. I went to Hancock for a semester, and there's not much going on when you're, just out. I was 19, and I'm like starting to look at schools back on the East Coast, and then I ended up connecting through a study abroad program in Paris with a bunch of Santa Barbara City College students. I did that semester abroad, and it was over there that my alcoholism took off. Because over there you could drink whenever you want, wherever you want. That's the main point. There's no open container laws. So I was like, it's on, and it was a party for me. And I noticed there were students, because it was a semester abroad, there were students actually doing the schoolwork. And I was there to, my new love, alcohol, it was on. And I would drink. And I remember sitting on a metro train, and it was like 1 PM, and I'm sitting there drinking a tall can of Dutch malt liquor, and it was disgusting. And it was just like, I'm looking around, I'm like, don't they know this is Europe? Like, didn't they get the memo? You can drink. You guys, like, come on. And I'm like, oh, this is very abnormal. And it was that aloneness, that feeling that I think everyone can relate to. It was a moment of, I'm different. This is not normal behavior. And I'll never forget that feeling. I would continue to drink for another 14 years. But I look back at that moment as it's like the first part of step one, right? I knew from very early on that I was powerless over alcohol, but my life wasn't unmanageable. This shit is too much fun. I ain't giving this up. Not for a long time. But that alcohol, it hit my bloodstream, I was content. Joe was okay with Joe, finally. And when I start drinking, I cannot stop. It's in the doctor's opinion, right? That phenomenon of craving. And once I start, I can't stop, nor do I want to stop. And so I knew I was alcoholic, really. But I was like, okay, well, I guess this is life now. And my life was manageable in my head. So I got to fast forward. I didn't really pass anything on that trip, and I went back and I lived in Isla Vista for a year, and then just drank even more than most people in Isla Vista. And you know Isla Vista. It's got that reputation. IV was a playground for drunks. And there was drinking, and there was drugs, and it was wild parties, and even there I drank abnormally in Isla Vista. But I still was like, okay, this is my thing. And I telemarketed for a few years. I don't know if anybody was in the telemarketing industry in like the early 2000s, but there were call centers all over Santa Barbara, so I could just quit when I wanted. You did it, Andrew. I could quit, I could go when I wanted, and I could be that alcoholic pothead. And on that trip to Paris, my girlfriend introduced me to that white powder. And that white powder helped me to drink as much as I wanted to. So I know this is Alcoholics Anonymous, but there were a lot of outside issues. And that stuff I didn't get addicted to for a few more years, but it became a huge part of my story. And I'm kind of grateful for it, because I'm pretty sure that accelerated my rock bottom. So I pulled what we call a geographic. I didn't know what I was doing with my life. I was 26, and my brother's like, you should move to New York City, live with me in New York. And I was like, I've always wanted to live in New York. I grew up an hour from there. I never lived in New York City, and I moved in with him in Brooklyn. And I somehow fell backwards into a good job, a human resources job on Wall Street. And then I thought I had arrived. And I love Bill's story. You know, you see the progression of the disease of alcoholism in Bill's story. And then when I look back and I scan back the searchlight over my life, I see the progression of my disease. And in New York City, the bars are open till 4 a.m. But my drink of choice was Old English malt liquor, 40s of Moe. And I'd go to the bar and I'd spend the money I had, and then I'd go and drink OE after. And it was just like this downward. I look now and I could see in hindsight the circle in the drain, the downward cycle. And just alcohol, drugs. I had arrived, I had a good job, and then the crisis hit. The economic crisis hit. It was 2008, but it started in 2007 in New York City. And my boss took me into her office, and she's like, we can't guarantee your job in the future. We don't know what's happening. And my anxiety was already through the roof. And I was like having trouble sleeping, and I'm like, okay, I got to get back. I got to get back to California. I got that itch to get back here, and I miss the sunshine, and I miss this place. And about a year before this happened, my brother took me to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. My brother, who was my drinking buddy, and we tore that town up. We happened to be walking down this street in Brooklyn on a Memorial Day, both of us hungover as shit. And who's walking down the street but my best friend from boarding school in Vermont? And this is one of those non-coincidences that I know that happen all the time, one of these God shots. He just happens to be walking down the street while my brother is at that moment of desperation, and that window of willingness to do something different happens. And Drew, my buddy, who's now in Los Angeles AA, was walking down the street, and they started to have a conversation. He carried the message to my brother. And so my brother joined Alcoholics Anonymous, and my grandpa was in Alcoholics Anonymous in the 70s and 80s in Connecticut, and his sober date was 7/7/77, which I loved. And I loved that man, and he was a good man, and I only knew him as a sober gentleman. I only knew him as an awesome sober grandpa, and I learned later on in life that he was in AA. And I know he sees me now. He sees me doing this thing happier than I've ever been because of AA. AA's given me this amazing life, and it's giving me things outside of AA, and it's unbelievable, and I know he's proud. And so my brother is going to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings in New York City, and I'm like, how is he doing this? This place is party city, and the bars are open till 4 a.m., and they're everywhere, and it's just like a great town to be a drunk. And he was miserable. It was like, even though I had that good job, even though I could go out and party and just play the big shot in cheap bar rooms, it was how I felt in here, and it was empty. I was living an alcoholic death. And so I saw my brother going to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, getting sober and happy, and that was something new. And that planted a seed. I was a little bit intrigued. I was not ready to stop drinking. He took me to an AA meeting, and I saw at this AA meeting in Brooklyn people laughing and people who were hilarious, and I saw that we are not a glum lot. And I love the name of this meeting, and I love this meeting. I love coming down here. The coolest name for an AA meeting, we're not a glum lot. One of my favorite lines in the big book, we're not a glum lot. And it's true. And a few sentences later, we absolutely insist on enjoying life. Newcomers, if you want what we have, just keep coming. Work these 12 steps. Get with a sponsor, work these 12 steps. And please get to that step 12 and help others. The great joy of my life today is working with others and seeing the light come on in these. And I got a sponsee now who's got a sponsee, finally. And to see that, God bless you. I love this deal. I love this life. So my brother brought me to a meeting, and that was it. And I wouldn't go for another few years, but there was a seed planted. I was going to support him, and I'm like, that's what my thinking was. I was going to support my brother, truly, but I know why he brought me to a meeting, because he knew I drank the way he did, an alcoholic of the hopeless variety, and he didn't want to see his brother drink himself to death. And so there was a seed planted. So we're going up to the point where I'm going to move back to California, and I'm like, I don't know when I'm going to have insurance again. I better get a checkup. And it turned out I had fatty liver. And I was 28, and I had fatty liver. And I had like the highest cholesterol the doctor had ever seen. And I was unhealthy, and I was bloated and smelly, right? When Fred met me. Bloated and smelly. What was my nickname? Sloppy Joe. I got better nicknames these days. And you got a snort laugh out of me on that one. So fatty liver. So the doctor, he's this Russian doctor, and he calls me, and I'm at work, and he's like, "Hey, Joe, do you drink beer?" I was like, oh, shit. This isn't a good sign. My doctor's calling me at work, asking if I drink beer. Probably not for good reason. And he's like, yeah, you're gonna have to get ultrasound. And so I scheduled an ultrasound appointment for a few weeks from then, but he told me, like, your liver enzymes are high. You need to stop drinking. And that night I was drinking Old English, my weapon of choice. And it's just like it says in here, you know, I, as an alcoholic, cannot stop drinking on the basis of self-knowledge. It's throughout chapter 3. It's a thread running through chapter 3 and the whole book. I know that I have a damaged liver. I'm 28, and the doctor scared the shit out of me. And I was like determined, and I had resolved that I wasn't going to drink again. That night I was drinking malt liquor. And so I'm about to move back to California, and I get the ultrasound, and it's confirmed I have fatty liver. He says, if you drink on fatty liver, cirrhosis is the next step. You drink on cirrhosis, you're dead. So self-knowledge, not sufficient. Knowing if I keep drinking, I'm a dead man. I had no defense against the first drink. I didn't have this. I had self-knowledge. Self-knowledge for an alcoholic is not enough. Not sufficient. I needed a sufficient substitute. I needed a spiritual solution. And so I kept, anytime a drink was slid my way, I'd take that drink. And I could have all the resolve in the world and, swearing with or without a solemn oath. And alcohol would always come back into my life. And I would stop for a little bit, and it would always come back. I could stop. I couldn't stay stopped. And so I got this DUI in 2011. So now we're talking, this is like 4 years later. 2011, I get a DUI in February, and I'm at the brew house in Santa Barbara, and I'm drinking and all day, and I got my blood alcohol content up to a 0.26, and I black out, and my buddy offers to give me a ride home, and apparently I was like, no, I got it. I don't want to have to go back in the morning and get my truck. I got this. I can drive. And I drove, and I blacked out, so I didn't know anything until I got a police report in the mail several weeks later. Yeah, so that's how I found out about the details of this DUI. And I get my truck out of impound the next day. There's a strip of duct tape on the passenger seat. I'm like, that's weird. Why is there a strip of duct tape? All right, I did not know what happened. I get the police report in the mail a few weeks later, and I'm reading this thing, and it's just like the most insane list of alcoholic behavior because I'm a Jekyll Hyde drunk. And I drank, and I drank, and I drank, and I drank, and I got in that car, and I followed some couple home, followed them up a Foothill Road where I lived to their house in Cathedral Oaks. Jock is my last name. I'm breaking whatever. It kept saying on the police report, Jock followed them on the car, followed them into their driveway, partially into their garage, which I'm pretty sure is trespassing, right? I don't know if I was following their lights because I couldn't see anything else. Thought it was a UFO. In a blackout, doing the most insane things. Insanity. And then it says, Jock exited the vehicle with his arms outstretched, walking towards the Botaraucos, laughing. Insanity. And it's a funny story, but it's to illustrate the alcoholic insanity, the Jekyll Hyde that I am. And finally, I was like, okay, I've tried to stop on my own. I need alcohol. I need this Alcoholics Anonymous thing. I need help from others. I'm gonna try this thing out. Fine. Life is gonna suck. It's gonna be boring, glum, and miserable. But I can't drink anymore. Clearly, I'm following people to their house and getting out and thinking there's some big joke, an inside joke in my head. And like, almost drove off a mountain on West Camino Cielo when I lived off the grid up there, and drunken Publix, and drunken public in New York City, drunken public in San Luis Obispo when I went up for one day for a friend's birthday party, smashing a 40-ounce bottle over my head. Like, these aren't things normal drinkers do. I'm gonna show you guys. They were trying to bash a 40-ounce bottle over a friend of mine, this is in my Isla Vista days, who had a helmet on, just Isla Vista shenanigans. They couldn't break it. You pussies! So I might explain a little something. I did it though, and they sang "For He's a Jolly Good Fellow," and they raised me on their shoulders. I'm an abnormie. Are there any abnormies in here? So, all right, I'm going to try this Alcoholics Anonymous thing, and I'm going to go in there because I am hopeless. I'm an alcoholic of the hopeless variety, and I need help from others. And little did I know that AA would introduce me to work. And I'm like, okay. I looked at the steps, and I'm like, okay, I can do it. Those all look like I can manage these, and then I saw 9. Made direct amends to such people wherever possible. So that scared me. And I implore you, if you're new and you haven't done the steps, please get through step 4 and 5. My first spiritual experience happened when I did step 5 with my sponsor, with a man I trusted. Because that first time I went into AA, I got up to that step 4, and I had a step 3 prayer with him. I did that. I started on that step 4. I dragged my feet. That window of willingness closed, and I said, "Thanks for the information, guys. Thanks for the information. I think it's good for you. I'm happy for you. It's working for you and my brother. But I'm not really into this Alcoholics Anonymous thing." And I was going to one meeting a week, the Junkyard Dogs, on Wednesday nights, and my sponsor's like, "You should try more than one meeting a week, Joe." So of course, inevitably, I drifted away from AA. I stayed dry for a few months, and a drink was slid my way, and I took it. And I drank for 2 years, and as it talks about in, I think it's chapter 3, each time a still worse relapse. And that last one brought me to the gates of, it brought me to insanity and to the gates of death. And I know if I take another drink again, I'm signing my death warrant. Like, I'm a dead man. It's curtains for Joe if I drink again. And so I can't afford another relapse. So I'm going to stay with Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm going to stay in here and stay connected to this amazing fellowship. You know, I've made a host of friends, and I have an amazing life that I could not have possibly dreamed of before. And I came back to AA. I went to Santa Barbara City College. I transferred into UCSB. I was living at my professor, who I worked for, at his home in the studio that they converted into it was like a basement they converted into a studio. And I was at UCSB, and I was doing well on the outside. Everything seemed like it was going well, and I was doing great in school. And I was a standout history student at UCSB, and I was doing great in school, but I was dying inside because my alcoholism wanted me dead. Our disease wants us dead. And so my drinking took on epic proportions. And by the end, I got to that bleak November. I related to Bill's story on so many levels. And I drank the way he did, not for 4 years or whatever it was, but it was a couple of months like that around the clock drinking. Just the hopeless alcoholic. And it's the pressures of school, recent heartbreak, dying inside, I give up. And by the end, it was, like I said, whiskey, in bed, around the clock. I don't even relate to that person anymore. I want to hug him and it's like, dude, just stop drinking. But it was all part of my journey, right? And now I'm grateful for what was the worst day of my life is now I consider the best day of my life. So on December 18th, that guy who was like a father figure to me, he was like my West Coast dad. He was the chair of the history department at Santa Barbara City College. He was a professor there for 49 years. He treated me like another son. And his cancer came back, and on December 18th, 2013, he died. And then I was using alcohol to cope. And his poor widow was living upstairs, hearing this animal down in the basement, this creature, this self-serving creature, dying. And I gave up. I was drinking suicide. She came downstairs and asked, "Do you want help?" And I said, "Yes, I want help." So she took it upon herself to look up Alcoholics Anonymous on the internet, and I was so out of my mind. I couldn't figure out. She knew I was trying Alcoholics. I was trying to get back into AA. I was in and out, and I couldn't figure out how to get my phone on, even to find my sponsor's phone number. So she took it upon herself to call AA. They sent 2 guys on a 12-step call, and they came and they saved my life. They got me out of there, and I remember hugging them and sobbing, and I knew that I was seeing the sunset, and I was looking into my new life. This new life, this amazing life. And they took me to AA. What they did is they took me to a hotel, a cheap, seedy hotel on State Street, instead of the hospital. I don't know why they didn't take me to 5E. It was called 5 Bath in those days, because I could have died from alcoholic detox. I thought my heart was going to explode. I'm shaking just shaking and baking and taking 20 showers a day at this seedy hotel room. And I'm grateful now that I went through it all without any help from the hospital, because I survived it. But I will never forget that detox. And that was a detox where I was hallucinating demons. I was seeing things that weren't there. And I was scratching for 2 weeks. And I never want to return to that. So I had a healthy fear of alcohol in my early recovery. So I got back into AA. I was so scared to call my sponsor back. I finally called him. He goes, "Let's get back into action. Let's get back into these 12 steps." And we did it, and I did the 12 steps, and I had that spiritual awakening, and I even started sponsoring guys. And I did this for a few years in Santa Barbara, and I moved in with Fred. And Fred is an AA mentor, and I'm so grateful for the influence you are. And I get to meet people like Fred, and men I look up to, and Rory. And it says in here, an alcoholic is an example of 10 minutes, all right. Self-will run riot. An extreme example of self-will run riot. Well, I'm an extreme example of self-will run riot. And the greatest thing that ever happened to me in my life, Alcoholics Anonymous, I drifted away from it. I started going to less meetings. I stopped calling my sponsor. And I was a dry drunk from before the pandemic up until 2.5 years ago. One thing we did, which is like a family tradition. My brother and my dad and I, my dad's a dry, sober guy, alcoholic for sure. And my brother who carried the message to me, and I keep pushing. I know this is a program of attraction rather than promotion, but I'm like, get to a meeting. It's my brother who carried the message to me, and I'm going to keep annoying him to get to meetings because he's in Austin, Texas. But one thing we do is we read out of the Big Book for an hour every Friday. And that was the one strand connecting me to Alcoholics Anonymous through my dry years, and I'm so grateful for that. But I was a dry drunk. I didn't have a sponsor. I didn't use any tools. I didn't do 10 steps. Hell no. I would get resentments, and they would gather. It was like a beehive up there of resentments, driving me crazy. And I do not recommend being a dry drunk. It's just like, look at this fellowship. Look at the fun we have. And most importantly, Alcoholics Anonymous has connected me with the God of my understanding. So 2.5 years ago, I went to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting with my dad in upstate New York, and something clicked. And I was like, I need this back in my life. And a light went on. And I'm so grateful for that. And I'm so grateful to have AA back in my life. So that was December, January 2022, 2023. And since then, I've been all in. And life has never been better. I'm happier than I've ever been, including my childhood years. And it's because I'm all in. It's because I live a spiritual way of life now. It's because I help others. Trust in God, clean house, help others. And life is amazing. And I'm sponsoring guys, and I'm going to a lot of meetings. And I've got most of my friends are in AA. And if you can take anything from me, from the speaking tonight, it's just know that I was this guy that hated myself, and today I love myself. And I love Alcoholics Anonymous, and thank you for having me.